A poor nurse was forced to marry a dying billionaire, but when he lived, he begged for her heart. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The sharp scent of antiseptic hung heavy in the quiet air of St. Jude's Hospital. Machines beeped softly, steady but fragile, like a heartbeat holding on to hope. The hallway lights flickered pale blue as Nurse Ana Rivera pushed open the door to room 407, the VIP ward that everyone whispered about but few ever entered. Inside, a man lay completely still beneath crisp white sheets. His name was Grant Carter, the billionaire tech magnate whose empire had once lit up every skyline from New York to Los Angeles. Now his body was pale, motionless, his chest rising and falling only because of the machine that breathed for him. Anna adjusted the IV line carefully, her latex gloves brushing against the cold metal of the bed rail. She had been on this case for 3 months, a rotation that most nurses avoided. The family had given up. The doctors had stopped believing. But Anna had not. They said you would not make it to summer, she whispered softly, checking his vitals. But I do not believe that. Her voice was calm, steady, the kind of tone that could soothe a storm. Every evening, when the floor quieted and the world outside grew dark, she performed her routine. She warmed a towel in the sink, wrung it carefully, and cleaned his face and hands. It was mechanical work, yet the way she did it carried tenderness. Sometimes she talked to him about her day. Sometimes she hummed an old Spanish lullaby her mother used to sing when nights were long and money was short. The nurse's station outside buzzed faintly through the wall, but inside room 407, it felt like time had frozen. Anna placed a small speaker beside his pillow and pressed play. Soft jazz filled the room, warm saxophone and piano, the kind of music that made silence less cruel. "I think you can hear me, Mr. Carter," she said, her eyes lifting to his still face. "If you can, blink once." Of course, there was no response. Still, she smiled as if he had. It was the same every night, the same care, the same quiet faith. Most of her co-workers thought she was wasting her time, but Anna had seen too many patients come back after everyone else had given up. And for reasons she could not explain, she felt that this man, this stranger who had everything, was still fighting in some hidden corner of his mind. Outside the window, rain began to fall soft at first, then heavier, streaking the glass like tears. Anna pulled the blanket higher over his chest, adjusted the monitor, and whispered, "You are not gone. Not yet." She did not know that, deep inside his fractured consciousness, Grant Carter heard that voice, faint, familiar, pulling him toward life. His fingers twitched beneath the blanket. Anna froze. Her eyes widened as she leaned closer, unsure if she had imagined it. "Mr. Carter," she whispered, her heart pounding. Nothing. She waited a few seconds longer, the rhythm of the machines steady once again. Maybe it was just her exhaustion, she thought. Maybe she had wanted it too much. Still, she stayed a little longer that night, sitting by his bedside, watching the rain slide down the window pane. She did not notice when the faintest movement came again, the smallest lift of a hand, as if reaching for her voice in the dark. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside, Anna whispered, almost like a prayer, "Hold on, Mr. Carter. Just a little longer." And for the first time in 6 long months, the monitor beside him began to change its rhythm. A heartbeat, faint but real, skipped stronger beneath the sound of the rain. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall hospital windows, painting long lines across the white floor. Nurse Ana Rivera rubbed her tired eyes and glanced at the monitor beside Grant Carter's bed. The rhythm had changed overnight. It was stronger, steadier. For the first time in months, it sounded alive. She checked his pulse again, then leaned closer, whispering, "Good morning, Mr. Carter. I think you heard me last night, did you not?" Her voice was soft but trembling. She wrote a note in his chart, her handwriting neat but rushed. Slight increase in neural activity, possible reflex movement. When she stepped into the hallway, Dr. Myers, the attending physician, was waiting near the nurse's station with a clipboard in hand. "Rivera," he said, glancing over his glasses. "You logged unusual brain activity again?" "Yes, sir," she replied. It is not just random spikes. There is a pattern now. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. We have been through this before. Coma reflexes can look like progress. Do not get your hopes up. Anna nodded politely, but her eyes said something else. She had seen too many so-called reflexes turn into miracles. That afternoon, she came back early from her lunch break. She brought a small portable speaker, the same one she used every night, and a worn paperback novel tucked under her arm. The hospital corridor was quiet, except for the steady hum of machines. She sat by his bedside and opened the book. I thought we might try something new today, she said, turning the first page. Stories keep people alive. My mother used to read to me when I was sick. Her voice flowed through the room like warm air on a winter morning. After the first chapter, she looked up and smiled faintly. If you can hear me, I hope you like this one. The monitor beeped once, a little faster than before. She froze, then laughed under her breath. All right, I will take that as a yes. Hours passed. The rain returned, tapping against the window pane. Anna finished the chapter and began cleaning his arm with a warm towel, as she always did. The fluorescent lights flickered softly above her. The world outside faded away. Then she saw it again. His hand moved. Not a twitch, not a reflex, an unmistakable motion. His fingers curling slightly, reaching toward the sound of her voice. Her heart leaped. Mr. Carter? Can you hear me? She pressed the call button, her pulse racing. Doctor, I think he is responding. Within moments, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Dr. Myers entered with two other nurses. They checked the monitor, his vitals, his pupils. For a moment, everything felt suspended. Then the doctor stepped back, his brows furrowed. Well, I will be damned, he whispered. He is showing voluntary motor response. Anna's hands shook. She had to blink back tears. For the rest of the day, the room buzzed with quiet energy. A neurologist arrived, scanning data, running tests. The results were astonishing. Grant Carter's brain activity had surged beyond anything the staff had seen since the accident 6 months earlier. When the evening shift ended, Anna stayed behind, long after the others had left. The hospital wing was dark, except for the soft glow of the monitor. She sat beside him, her exhaustion hidden under a small, content smile. I told you, she said quietly. You are still fighting. Outside, thunder rolled again. She closed her eyes for a moment, resting her head on her folded arms at the edge of his bed. Sometime past midnight, a faint sound stirred her awake, a rasping breath, followed by the slow, unsteady motion of lips forming a word. Where am I? Anna's head snapped up. The sound was weak but real. Grant's eyes were open, unfocused, blinking against the bright light. Her breath caught in her throat. You are in St. Jude's Hospital, she said, her voice shaking. You have been in a coma for 6 months, but you are safe now. He tried to speak again, but the words came out dry and broken. Who are you? She reached for a cup of water, holding it carefully to his lips. I am Anna, she said softly. Your nurse. He looked at her for a long time, as if searching for something familiar in her face. Then, a faint smile touched his lips. I remember. Your voice. Her eyes welled up, but she smiled back. You have no idea how long I have waited to hear you say anything. For a moment, silence filled the room again, different this time, full of awe instead of emptiness. Grant's breathing steadied. His eyes drifted toward the window, where the storm had finally cleared. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the wet glass. Anna adjusted the blanket around him and whispered, Rest now. We will talk tomorrow. He nodded weakly, his eyes closing again, not from sickness this time, but from peace. And as she turned off the lamp and stepped quietly out of room 407, she knew her life and his had just crossed a line neither of them could ever step back from. The following morning, the world inside St. Jude's Hospital felt different. Word had already spread through the staff. The billionaire in room 407 had woken up. Doctors whispered about it at the nurses' station. Orderlies peeked in through the glass window just to make sure it was true. But for Anna Rivera, the moment was not gossip. It was a quiet miracle that had changed everything. When she entered the room, Grant Carter was awake, his eyes following the slow movement of light across the wall. The once motionless man now looked fragile but alive. He turned his head slightly when he heard her footsteps. Good morning, she said softly, setting a tray of water and fresh bandages on the side table. He tried to smile, but his voice came out low and rough. Morning, Nurse Anna, right? She nodded, checking his pulse. You remember my name. That is a good start. He blinked, his gaze searching. I remember your voice first. You talked to me, did you not? I heard you sometimes. Like in a dream. Anna hesitated for a second, her hands still adjusting the IV tube. I talked because I believed you could hear me. Looks like I was right. He gave a faint chuckle, the sound dry but warm. Then, I guess I owe you more than I can ever repay. She smiled gently. You owe me nothing. You just need to focus on getting stronger. The next few days passed like chapters in a story neither of them could explain. Every morning, Anna guided him through simple physical therapy, lifting his arms, bending his knees, helping him sit upright for the first time in months. His muscles trembled, his breathing shallow, but his determination surprised everyone. Do not rush, she reminded him each time. He would grit his teeth and whisper, I am tired of lying down. I want my life back. During one session, she noticed him staring at his reflection in the window. The gray skin, the unshaven jaw, the faint scars on his temple. He said quietly, I used to be someone people feared. Now I cannot even lift a glass of water. Anna placed her hand over his, steadying it. Maybe that is not such a bad thing. Fear is not the same as respect. Something in his eyes shifted then, a softness she had not seen before. Outside their small world, the hospital moved at its usual pace, but inside room 407, time seemed to slow down. She read to him every evening stories about second chances, about people who lost everything and found meaning again. Sometimes he listened with his eyes closed, smiling faintly at the sound of her voice. Late one night, as she prepared to leave, he said, Anna, why did you never give up on me? She paused at the doorway. Because you were still here, breathing. That was enough reason. He looked at her for a long time, his voice quiet. You believed in me before I believed in myself. The next morning, when the physical therapist came to check his progress, she found Grant already sitting upright, his hands gripping the bed rails. The doctor smiled in disbelief. Looks like you are making headlines again, Mr. Carter. But for Anna, it was never about headlines. It was about dignity, the simple act of helping a man remember he was still human. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, she stood by the window watching the golden light fall across his face. He said softly, I used to think power meant control. Now I think it means gratitude. Anna turned to him, her expression gentle but steady. Then you are already stronger than before. He smiled, a real one this time. Maybe, but I think I only started living again because of you. She looked away for a moment, her throat tightening. Then do not waste it, Mr. Carter. He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on her. I will not. Outside, the city glowed under the first stars of evening, and inside that quiet hospital room, a man once lost between life and death began to reclaim, both guided by the quiet grace of a nurse who never stopped believing. Days turned into weeks, and room 407 no longer felt like a place of silence. Grant Carter could now sit up without help, eat on his own, and even walk short distances with a cane. The transformation amazed the staff, but no one was more proud than Anna Rivera. She had seen his first breath of awareness, his first step, his first laugh. Each small victory felt like watching winter melt into spring. Every morning she brought him warm tea instead of the usual hospital coffee. He teased her once, saying, Are you trying to turn this place into a cafe? She smiled. If it helps you heal faster, maybe I am. Their conversations became longer, more personal. He asked about her life, her small apartment near the river, her younger brother studying in another state, her mother who had passed away years ago. In return, he told her about the company he had built, the boardroom wars, the friends who had disappeared when he fell. One evening, as she changed his IV dressing, he said quietly, When I was in that coma, I kept hearing a voice telling me to fight. It was yours, was it not? Anna nodded slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. I just did not want you to be alone. He looked at her with a softness that made her heart stutter. You gave me a reason to come back. You did more than anyone else ever did. The words lingered in the room, heavier than silence. Anna turned away, pretending to check the monitor. She could not let herself feel too much, not for a patient, not for a man who once lived a world away from hers. But Grant had changed. The arrogance she had expected from a billionaire was gone, replaced by humility and gratitude. He often watched the other patients in the rehabilitation ward and asked Anna about their stories. Sometimes he even donated equipment anonymously, insisting it stay quiet. One afternoon, as they walked slowly down the corridor, Grant stopped near a window overlooking the city skyline. The sun dipped low, turning the glass towers gold. "I used to think I owned this view," he said softly. "Now I realize I never really saw it until now." Anna smiled, adjusting his blanket over his shoulders. "Maybe you needed to slow down to notice it." He looked at her, his eyes steady. "Maybe I needed you." For a long moment they just stood there, a nurse in her simple white uniform and a man rediscovering what it meant to be alive. That night, as Anna finished her shift, she found a folded note on the bedside table. It was written in careful, shaky handwriting. "Thank you for saving my life. Not just my body, my soul." She pressed the note to her chest, her throat tight. Outside, the city lights flickered like quiet promises. Inside room 407, Grant Carter slept peacefully, his heart steady and strong, no longer the dying billionaire the world had given up on, but a man reborn by kindness. A month later, the hospital declared Grant Carter well enough to continue recovery from home. The once silent billionaire now moved carefully but freely, his cane tapping softly on the tiled floors as he left St. Jude's Hospital for the first time in half a year. Nurses gathered to wish him luck, but his eyes searched only for one face. Anna stood near the exit doors, holding his discharge papers. Her smile was warm, but her voice carried a trace of sadness. "You are officially free, Mr. Carter. Try not to get into any more accidents." He laughed quietly. "No promises." Then his tone softened. "Will you visit? Just to make sure I do not forget how to live." "I think you will remember," she said, looking down at the papers. "You have come too far to fall back." He hesitated, wanting to say more, but she stepped back politely, her professional mask in place. "Take care of yourself," she added. "And thank you for proving me right." He nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting. "No, Anna. Thank you for believing when no one else did." A black car waited at the curb to take him home. As he slid inside, Grant glanced back through the glass doors and saw her watching. He raised his hand in quiet gratitude before the car disappeared into the late afternoon sun. For the first time in years, his penthouse felt empty. The city stretched beneath him like a kingdom he no longer recognized. There were flowers from business partners, cards from acquaintances, and endless emails asking about his return to work. Yet the only voice he missed was the one that had carried him out of the dark. That night, unable to sleep, Grant opened the small envelope she had slipped between his discharge papers. Inside was a folded note written in her careful handwriting. "Healing takes time, but do not forget being alive is not the same as living." The next morning, he sat at his grand piano, touching the keys for the first time since before the crash. The melody that came out was uneven but hopeful, the same song Anna used to play through her small speaker in room 407. At the hospital, Anna's days returned to routine, though part of her still lingered in that room where belief had met a miracle. Cameras flashed outside his company's headquarters as he made his first public appearance, thinner, quieter, no longer the ruthless tycoon they remembered. Inside the glass tower of Carter Industries, board members greeted him with forced smiles. "It is good to have you back, Grant," one said, but the tone was cold, calculated. He had barely taken his seat before the questions began about control, assets, and the company's future. Grant listened silently, his mind still adjusting to the noise of power he once commanded so easily. But something felt wrong. The reports from the months before his crash had inconsistencies, numbers that did not add up. The accident itself had been labeled mechanical failure, yet the maintenance logs were missing. That night, in his penthouse office overlooking the city, Grant opened the old files himself. One by one, hidden emails surfaced, orders signed by his own chief financial officer, transfers linked to offshore accounts, documents suggesting someone had wanted him out of the picture. He leaned back, the reality sinking in like cold water. The car crash had not been an accident. The next morning, he called only one person he trusted. "Anna," his voice said over the phone, calm but urgent. "I need your help." She hesitated. "Are you all right?" "I am fine, but I think the truth about what happened to me is not what they told us." Later that day, she met him at the penthouse, still wearing her hospital ID clipped to her uniform. She looked out of place among the marble floors and city views. Grant gestured toward a folder on the desk. These files show payments and forged signatures from my board. They covered something up. I need someone who will not lie to me. And the sins are in the spotter by where other feet are play, and the sit of light vary. Anna opened the folder carefully, her expression tightening as she scanned the pages. This, this looks like an internal plot, she said quietly. Someone wanted you gone. He nodded. And I intend to find out who. She looked up, meeting his eyes. Why tell me? Because you are the only person I can trust, he said. Everyone else either works for me or wants something from me. For a moment, the air between them felt heavy, a mix of truth and danger. She placed the folder down and said, if you are going to dig into this, do it carefully. Power attracts enemies, Grant, even when you mean well. He smiled faintly. You sound like someone who has seen more of life than I ever did. She shook her head. No, I just know that honesty is harder to keep than money. He looked at her, his voice softening. Then stay close to me. I need someone who remembers what being human feels like. It is God, self God. Outside, lightning flashed against the skyline, illuminating his reflection in the glass, a man reborn, no longer fragile, but not the same as before. Anna turned toward the storm beyond the window and whispered, then promise me one thing if the truth hurts. Do not forget why you came back. Grant nodded slowly. I will not forget. Not this time. In that quiet room above the city, two lives that had once met in the stillness of a hospital now stood at the edge of another battle. One for justice and one for their hearts. 2 days after the storm, Grant Carter stood in the boardroom of Carter Industries, facing the people he once trusted. The conference table gleamed under the city lights, but tension filled the air. Documents lay spread before him, evidence of betrayal hidden in plain sight. I have read every file, he said, his voice calm but sharp. Millions were transferred under false authorization. You all signed off on it. One of the executives, a man named Holden Price, adjusted his tie. You were in a coma, Grant. We had to keep the company running. By stealing from it? Grant replied, his gaze steady. By sabotaging my car? Silence fell across the room. A few faces turned pale. The weight of truth pressed against every corner of the glass tower. Holden smirked faintly. You have no proof of that. Grant's expression did not change. Not yet, but I will. He closed the folder and stood. Carter Industries is not built on greed. If you want war, you will have it. When he returned home that night, exhaustion followed him like a shadow. The penthouse, once his fortress, now felt too large, too quiet. He picked up his phone, hesitated, and called the only person who reminded him why he was fighting. Anna answered after the third ring. Mr. Carter? Grant, he said softly. I found out who did it. The crash, it was no accident. There was a pause on the line. Then what are you going to do? I am going to expose them, he replied. But I do not know who to trust anymore. Her voice steadied him like a heartbeat. Then start with yourself. You already came back from the dead, Grant. Do not stop now. He exhaled slowly, a faint smile in his voice. You always know what to say. That is what nurses do, she said gently. We remind people they are still alive. Outside, thunder rolled again over the city. Grant looked out across the skyline, his reflection flickering against the window, a man no longer defined by power, but by purpose. He whispered into the dark. You saved my life, Anna. Now I am going to save what is left of it. We dusted might. And somewhere on the other end of the call, her quiet voice answered, then make it count. The next morning, headlines erupted across every major news outlet. Carter Industries under internal investigation. Grant Carter had moved quickly. Overnight, he had released a full audit of company transactions to the public, exposing corruption that reached all the way to the boardroom. The world saw the truth. The car crash that almost killed him had been arranged by those closest to him. Reporters flooded the lobby of Carter Tower, their microphones raised like weapons. Grant walked through them without hesitation, his cane steady, his expression calm. For the first time in years, he did not look like a billionaire defending an empire. He looked like a man reclaiming his name. Inside the press room, flashes went off as he stepped to the podium. I was given a second chance at life, he began, his voice echoing across the crowded hall. And I will not waste it protecting those who destroy others for profit. Carter Industries will be rebuilt on honesty and dignity. As he spoke, the screen behind him displayed the names of the executives involved. Gasps rippled through the room. Security entered moments later to escort the men out. The world was watching as justice finally took shape. When the conference ended, Grant returned to his car, exhaustion creeping into his bones. He glanced at his phone, saw one unread message, and opened it. "Proud of you, Anna." For a long moment, he just stared at the words, feeling something warm rise in his chest. That evening, rain began to fall again over the city. Grant sat at his piano, the lights dim, the melody slow and deliberate. Each note carried the weight of everything he had lost and everything he had found again. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, there is someone here to see you." Grant looked up. "Who?" The door opened before she could answer. Anna stood in the doorway, still in her nurse's uniform, holding an umbrella dripping rainwater onto the marble floor. For a second, neither of them spoke. The music filled the silence between them. Then she smiled faintly. "You played it better this time." He rose slowly, his cane steady beside him. "Because this time, I was not playing to remember you. I was playing to thank you." Outside, thunder rolled, but inside, the storm had finally passed. Grant took a slow breath, his eyes fixed on her as if afraid she might vanish again. For weeks he had imagined this moment, but now that she was standing before him, soaked from the rain, it felt more real than anything in his empire. Anna set the umbrella aside and stepped closer, her shoes leaving small wet marks on the marble floor. "You did it," she said quietly. "You faced them, and you won." He gave a faint smile. "I did not win. I just told the truth. You are the one who taught me how." She looked at him for a long moment, the soft lamplight reflecting in her eyes. "You would have found your strength either way." "Maybe," he said, his voice steady, "but I would not have found myself." They stood in silence as the sound of rain echoed against the windows. For the first time, the city below seemed calm. No noise, no chaos, just quiet. Grant reached for the folded piece of paper sitting on the piano. He opened it slowly and handed it to her. It was her old note from the hospital, carefully preserved. "Healing takes time, but do not forget being alive is not the same as living." "I kept it," he said. "Every day I read it before I walked into that building. It reminded me why I came back." Anna's throat tightened as she held the paper. "I wrote it for you, but I think I needed to hear it too." He nodded, stepping closer. "Then maybe it is time we both start living." Her lips parted, unsure what to say. "Grant?" Before she could finish, he took her hand. "I know you have your work, your patience, your world that does not include me, but I need you to know everything I rebuilt, every step I took, it all led back to you." Anna shook her head gently. "You do not owe me anything." "I am not talking about owing," he said softly. "I am talking about choosing." Of Lasterador de Severden Sevens. Tensing adder 2, the rain outside softened, turning into a mist that blurred the city lights. He placed her note back on the piano and pulled something small from his pocket. It was a silver locket engraved with the initials G.C. Inside was a photo, a blurry print from the hospital security feed, showing her sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. "I had the nurses find this for me," he said. "I do not remember the day I woke up, but I remember this feeling, someone refusing to let me go. That was you." Anna blinked back tears. "You do not need to thank me for doing my job." "This was never a job," he said, his voice quiet but certain. "You gave me back more than my life. You gave me purpose." She smiled faintly. "And what are you going to do with it?" He stepped closer until their hands met again. "Use it well. Build something worth your faith. And maybe, if I am lucky, convince you to stay in my life while I do." Anna laughed softly, shaking her head. "You sound like a man who is trying to negotiate another miracle." He smiled. "Maybe I am." For a long moment, they simply stood there, no contracts, no machines, no silence between them anymore. Only two people who had walked through loss and found something stronger on the other side. Grant took her hand again and placed it over his chest. His heartbeat was steady and sure. "You once said I was alive but not living. Now I want to live, and I want to start with you." Her eyes shimmered with warmth. "Then stop talking and prove it." He laughed, a sound full of life, and leaned forward until their foreheads touched. Outside, the clouds parted, letting the morning sun break through for the first time in days. The light filled the room, glinting off the piano keys, the silver locket, and the quiet smile on Anna's face. Grant whispered, "You saved me." when I could not save myself. Anna replied, her voice steady. You saved yourself when you chose to love again. In that moment, every scar, every silence, every note of the song he had once played for her found its meaning. The man who had been lost between life and death was finally home. The camera of memory closed on that single image, two hands intertwined beside the piano. Sunlight spilling across the floor, the faint melody of hope rising once more. And just like that, the story that began in a quiet hospital room ended not with a goodbye, but with a promise.